Welcome to Slightly Off Script, the marriage show where we remind you that marriage can be stupid good and wicked fun. I'm one of your hosts, Bethany Needham, here with Andy.
Andy.
Yeah.
That's it. I don't
know if I've done just Andy. Yeah. Trying something new.
This is not as convenient as the last setup.
How's that going for you?
It was, we still got some. We're still, always experimenting here at the Slightly Off Script podcast.
Yep.
Changing the script.
If
you're listening audio only, we are experimenting with a different setup.
Chairs. He stole my living room chairs, which is okay because I'm on a hunt for a new living room sofa, and this feels like a step in that direction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, excited about that.
I am excited. It's also been way more difficult than I remember sofa shopping. I don't know if I've just gotten pickier or if now I realize once you buy a sofa,
you have it for a while.
Yeah, you're like sticking with it. So I'm nervous about
sort of like these
deciding.
Sewer too tall mic stands.
Yeah.
I didn't put as much thought as you did into the try to go a little cheap and didn't quite come up.
It didn't work out. That's okay. So well. It's all right. They're pretty.
Yeah.
Even if they don't function.
No, they function ish.
Ish.
You had quite an adventure. Was it last week? Yes, It was last week.
Was it really?
It feels like a year ago.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. So let me set the stage for you.
All right, set the stage.
I decided.
And scene.
I decided that I was going to try a different kind of workout, something outside my usual, and that being Pilates. Because what's more fun than someone like, oh, what do you like to do for exercise? And I was like, I like to powerlift and Pilates.
I don't even know if I could tell you what Pilates is.
That's fair. I also...
Expensive, that's what...
Yeah, it's a little more costly than I liked. But they opened a new Pilates studio, not too far from my work. And the grand opening, I was like, I'll go try a class, whatever. And so this was going to be my first official Pilates class. It's
also a brand new studio.
Just brand new studio. The whole little whatever building that it's in, the whole thing is brand new, like all the things in there. So I get to the class, I go in, I do the thing. I'm terrible at Pilates, in case you wondered, which tells me it's probably good that I'm doing it. But I come out at the end of class, and so basically I've got to leave this class and go straight to work. I come out, I go to get my car, and I'm like, wait a second. And I look in the back window. I don't know what, you don't call it a windshield. What is it on the back?
The rear window.
The rear window.
Like in the part of the lift gate.
Yeah, is smashed in, like a huge hole. It literally looked like someone took one of those large bricks and just threw it through the center of my window.
I'm going to put a picture on the video feed. So you can go to YouTube or Spotify and you can see Bethany's vandalized vehicle.
Yeah. So my first thought was, are you kidding me? Because I'm supposed to be at work.
Yeah.
And
you have part of your job is to get things set up to get going for the
day. I do a lot of things first thing in the morning. And on the way to work, I just found out about a couple of coworkers were out sick. So I was already feeling this behind
the eight ball.
Gotta get there. So, and then I almost just had this moment of what do I even do? And also, who would smash my window? It was not a normal time of day.
This is not like a downtown city. I think might technically still be in Concord, but it's right on the Boscawen. This is the rural part of the city too. This is not downtown or anything.
It did not make sense. And I'm looking around the parking lot. Nobody else's window is smashed.
Just yours.
Just mine. So then I'm thinking, I had a lot of mom stickers on there. I was kind of maybe over the top with the mom stickers.
Someone doesn't like dogs because you're a dog mom.
It's maybe
I'm a cat person.
Maybe someone's got
throwing a brick
mom issues. And they're
oh yeah,
I hate my mom. Smash. I don't know. So I called the police station and explained what happened. They're like, all right, we're going to send out an officer. And so on the phone, I'm like, so I work it would take me 5 minutes to drive to my office. I was like, is it possible? Could we meet there and I can do a report? And she's like, no, you can't move the vehicle. It's tampering, whatever. I don't even know. And so then I was like, do you have any idea of how long this might take? Because I know it's not an emergency. And yeah. So the lady again is like, nope, sorry, not sure. So I end up sitting there for an hour waiting for this officer. And meanwhile,
Nothing was missing from the car though, too. Like you said, you had taken your bag in to the gym.
no valuables.
The Bible was still sitting on the seat. So
All that was in there was a Bible. I actually had the funny thought, how funny if they went in to steal and then they're like, oh, the Bible. Now I feel bad. Then they
not going to smash the other windows.
Yeah, they decided that was it. So
and part of what didn't track for me when I looked at it, I'm like, if you want to get in the vehicle, that's the dumbest window.
Yeah.
Because like if you do the door, you can open the door, but
yeah,
I don't know. It did not make sense.
Nothing made sense. And I was looking in the vehicle to see, because my other thought was like, could a rock have flown up, you know, whatever. And nothing made sense. So I waited for the police to come. They came. He pulled in. I was like, he's just asking some questions. He's looking at it. And clearly, like, that's the other thing. All the glass is inside the vehicle. Like, it broke in.
Yep.
And the officer's like, so do you have any angry exes that...
Anybody go Carrie Underwood on you?
Which I was
Louisville
like,
Slugger?
I was like...
To both headlights?
I have been married for almost 23 years. I don't have exes that would remember who I was, let alone be
They're playing the long game. I broke up in middle school, and here we are 25 years later, and they have tracked me down.
Well played, Jeff. Well played. Didn't see that one coming. So then he was basically trying to like, is there anyone...
Jeff was into cats, so...
Maybe he hated that dog sticker. It's going to be so awkward if he listens to this. So anyway.
That's fine with me, Jeff.
So this story is out of control.
Off script, maybe.
So, a little off script. So he takes down all the information. He too is baffled because again, no other car. That's why he's like, this is so targeted. Like,
well, and he's like, somebody at your workplace, or because you got there's still like weird.
And I'll be honest, the questioning is actually a little bit what made, I know he's doing his job, but it made me uncomfortable because I am not a paranoid person. No. And it was starting to make me nervous.
Yeah, because it's like, if this is random, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But he's got to like, no, somebody would be like targeting you.
Yeah, and which means they followed me to a place I've never been before. Mm-hmm. Like, it just was all very... But I wasn't necessarily...
But it's also throwing your day off. You're just, whatever.
Yeah. I'm kind of... At this point, I'm like, oh, this is a mess. So... While he was there taking the report, that someone from the bank came out and said, we have a camera that actually has a perfect angle on, because
bank footage has come in clutch for your family multiple times.
Yes, for real. Some better than others. It worked out in my favor in this case. So the Pilates manager during all this was like actually going to the other businesses to see, because she didn't have any cameras.
Doesn't look good for her. Like there's vandalism.
Yeah, she's like, I'm going to figure this out. So the police officer was like, I'm going to go look at the footage. I'm like, I really have to go to work. And so he like smashed out the rest of the window. Because he didn't want glass, obviously, getting all over the road. So I went to work, whatever, did the work thing. And then I get a call later that day. And it's the officer. He's like, you're not going to believe this. He's like, so that the video footage has had a perfect angle on your vehicle. So I went back through, because I told him I arrived at this time.
And it was Jeff.
Spoiler alert. No, it was not. I had made a joke when he was asking me all these questions. And the joke was meant to be like, I don't want to think about someone just doing this to be mean. That's terrible. So my joke was, well, can a window just smash itself? And he laughed and he was like, yeah, that's not usually how this goes. And he's like, I'm watching the surveillance video. He's like, and it literally, your window just imploded.
Yeah.
Like they could see it on.
I wish we had that footage. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah,
I don't think the officers got time for that.
He's like, ain't nobody got time for that. But he did write out a report for. He's like, I wrote it all out. He's like, you can watch it. It's there, and then it just basically is like you see it, and it's weird because it literally imploded, like it exploded into the vehicle. But come to find out, if you own a CRV, look out, because this happens sometimes with this vehicle.
It's not like a common issue, but it's a known issue.
Yeah, not enough for a recall, but almost enough to...
Still enough for an insurance deductible.
Yeah. And Jeff almost had a restraining order on him. I'm just kidding. But I was thinking a couple of things from it. I was so thankful. When the officer called me and told me the story, I didn't realize how like tense I had been until he told me that, because the relief I felt of, I don't need to worry that somebody is like weirdly stalking me and decide to smash my window in. And then secondly, that it happened when my car was parked and I was in the gym, not
happened when
on the highway.
When you're driving, you think Jeff's shooting at you.
Yeah. Like, yes, that'd be the first thing that came to mind. I would immediately flash back to a middle school boyfriend. Well, high school boyfriend, but still. Yeah, so that was my craziness. And
well, that was most of it, and that's the dominant part of the story. But there was a part 2 to this story.
I don't really think they need part 2. I feel like that.
So part 2 of the story. So you got to give part 2 of the story. It was like the situation that was most likely to result in a fight and just ended up in an inconvenience. And I don't think we fought. But I feel like because I didn't fight with you about it, I get to share it on the podcast. This is my justice.
You probably could have shared it even if we fought. Okay, so here's how it went. I had to make an appointment to get the window fixed.
Safe rent repair, safe rent replace.
Sad. Maybe they'll sponsor us now. And it had just, honestly, the week had been rough. And we finally get to that day. So it's a few days out. They can't even do it right away. So I parked the car in the garage. Finally, the day it needs to be repaired. And you had so graciously offered to get the car to the repair shop.
I'm working from home. I can run the car over there. I'll just work from the waiting room. No big deal. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
Except that you're not so bright.
Well, when I came home from the gym, I used my Corolla because we weren't driving the car with the broken. I'm like, I can drive it to the repair place, but I'm not going to obviously drive it around. And so I get home from the gym. It's like 8:30. It was a 10 o'clock appointment. I'm like, you know what? I should just make sure that I have a key.
Which you didn't. Let's fast forward this story.
So I called you.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, I only have my key. And then you're like looking at your bag, and then you said,
oops.
Oh, goodness.
Goodness gracious.
And then I had to jump in my car and drive 25 minutes north.
Yep.
25 minutes back to the house.
Yep.
And then over to Safelight. And I made it in time, and they were good customer service. And
I feel like any spouse listening knows you've had to have had one of those moments where you just do something so dumb, like you're not intentionally.
No,
but so dumb, and it's gonna make your spouse, like, it's such an annoying inconvenience, and you can't fix it, and you're just like, I feel terrible right now, and there's literally nothing I can do.
So it's sort of like, thanks for that favor that you're doing for me. How about you do another huge favor?
Which is what I said to my coworker. I was like, so basically my husband was doing me this amazing favor, and then like a jerk, I made him.
That's right.
Added an hour of driving to it.
I actually, sometimes the car time, I actually get a lot of phone calls done. So you just created a great space for me to make a few phone calls. And,
oh, well, you're welcome.
Yeah, good job.
Anytime, here to help.
Yeah, it's funny with these things too, because like part of what you process as you hopefully get more mature, at least for me, I'm like, you know what? We have friends that are struggling with so many things in their lives and their marriages. Like, this is literally just, I have to drive a little, like even the glass thing. I mean, I understand your anxiety when the officer's like, who's targeting you? Jeff.
Dun. Meow.
But outside of that, it's like one of those things where it's just like, these are just everyday inconveniences that are like, it happens. So yeah, vehicle stuff could be way worse, to be honest with you. We've had someday we'll share the saga of the Amco transmission company.
Oh no, too soon. Too soon.
With a different vehicle.
No, I am very thankful though, because honestly, if that had happened on the highway, I very likely would have crashed the car, because I mean, you're not driving down the highway expecting your back windshield to blow into your car.
Yeah.
Like, I think it would have. Yeah, I don't even want to think about it. So thank you, Lord, for protection.
So today we have a special episode and a unique episode, not just because we're sitting in these chairs and a different setup, but we actually have an interview that you did, and we're talking about the topic of rest. And we have an expert, a rest expert.
Yeah, which I am not. I decided an expert. And also, after doing this interview, and I realized I have so much to learn in the area of rest
Mm.
and so many things that I think I've just had it wrong. And I'm kind of looking forward to doing some reading on this. Coming out of this interview, I felt like, wow, one, I need to study this more and understand it more. And two, I think, well, honestly, just recognizing that I'm kind of terrible at it.
Yeah, I think that what we'll take away from this interview is kind of expanding people's, I know for me, giving new vocabulary to rest, thinking about different categories of rest. And I'm really excited about this conversation that you had, and let's jump right into it.
Here we go. Okay, I am here with Dr. Sandra Dalton-Smith. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Oh, I am very excited. My husband, who I believe met you in a faith-driven entrepreneur group, if I'm
Yes.
correct.
Yes.
Yes. And he had shared just about the work that you do, the books that you had written. And I know personally, I'm somebody that feels like I could learn more in regards to rest. And so I feel like this podcast interview could easily just be a counseling session where you just tell me what to do. But I'm very thrilled to have you here. You have a number of books that you've written, Sacred Rest being one of them. There's a few more which we'll talk about. And you have an even more recent book, Being Fully Known. But I'm excited because obviously I don't know if is it fair to say that you're sort of a rest expert? Because I kind of feel like that's where this is leading.
I have been called that. That wasn't my intent in the process. I initially started off as a burned out physician, just looking for answers for myself. But that information and the research has helped quite a few people and has led to being called by many a rest expert.
How long ago was that? You mentioned it started with you being a burned out physician. Like, how many years have you kind of been doing this research and study?
Yeah, I burned out when my kids were toddlers and they're both now in college. So it's been going on for a while. The book released in 2017, but it was in the process of being written since 2009. So a lot of the research and the background and all of the things started as far back as 2009.
Wow. And so in your book, you actually identify 7 types of rest. Could you briefly just explain these different types of rest?
Yeah, so the 7 include physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, social, sensory, and creative, each one being very specific in the type of energy that's being used. So physical having to do with anything that exhausts our physical body. So physical rest being things like things that improve your circulation, that include your lymphatics. So things like massage therapy, stretching, leisure walks, where you're basically just moving the circulation around, things like the body ergonomics of your workstation. All of those things fall under physical rest, the active component of physical rest. And then we have the passive component of physical rest that we're all familiar with, sleeping and napping as well. That's just as important. Then with mental rest, we're taking a look at how do we downgrade some of the mental processing that we do. There's a lot of decision fatigue that leads to exhaustion. And so we're looking at someone with a mental rest deficit, maybe the person who lays down at night and their brain won't shut off and they're thinking all the thoughts, or they have a hard time holding on to information because they feel like their mind's just brain fog, or they feel like there's just so much information they can't capture things. And so that's deficit can be overcome with certain types of mental rest, like mindfulness activities, things like brain dumps, where you're taking time to find moments or reprieves, we might say, where you're able to put down whatever that is that you're ruminating over and that you're thinking over, so that your brain is relieved from the pressure of doing that. Spiritual rest specifically is taking a look at your relationships. So people of faith, spiritual rest usually looks like relationship, leaning more into the spirituality of relationship with God rather than the activities that we do. It's focusing more on the being rather than the doing part of spirituality.
Mm.
For those who struggle with emotional rest, these are the people pleasers. These are the people who maybe carry quite a bit of emotional labor within their job, meaning they're not able to express their emotions authentically. People in customer service deal with emotional labor. They have an irate customer. They still have to keep a smile on their face. Teachers deal with parents and they still have to keep a smile on their face. So those kind of, people in counseling and healthcare dealing with very hard situations, they don't burst out in tears. They learn how to keep their emotions in check. And so emotional rest deficits occur either when there's excessive emotional labor, you're having to suppress your emotions professionally, or you just don't feel the liberty to be authentic for whatever the reason. You feel judged, you feel unseen, you feel as if you have to meet someone's specific expectations. And all of those things lead to this feeling of, I can't be me, and this feeling of performance that drives that. And so you want to have those moments in your life when you can have emotional rest and share who you really are, be real, be authentic, share your emotions without feeling like you have to censor them. Social rest, looking at your relationships and evaluating if they are life-giving or if they're draining and causing you to have a social rest deficit. Majority of the people in our lives are pulling from our social energy. They need things from us. They have demands upon our schedule and our time. And we then have to make sure that we are spending time with people who are nourishers, who are actually pouring back into us and who are feeding that part of ourselves, specifically as adults, having adult friends. Because right now, most people spend all of their time with family or at work, and they don't have people who don't need anything from them. And so they always feel as if they're in giving mode and pouring mode, and they're never in receiving mode. And then the final two are sensory rest and creative. Sensory rest is looking at, just like it says, your sensory inputs. Oftentimes, we have sensory-rich environments, whether that's working on your computer or being in a busy city with traffic and honking horns. There's a lot of sensory input that a lot of us experience. And we don't realize how much energy is drained from the sensory processing. For example, I had mentioned I just got back from a trip where I'm on a plane and I'm in airports quite a bit. And so the plane has noise. The airport has noise. I get to my location. If I'm not mindful of the excessive amount of sensory input and the sensory overload, I'll arrive there irritated, agitated, feeling exhausted and not understand why. And it's the same for, let's say, a parent maybe who's working from home and they have homeschooling kids and the kids are noisy, and we think, oh, I'm tuning out all this background noise. I'm tuning out the kids. I'm tuning out the airline or the airport. And really the only way you can tune it out is if your brain's processing it. So something's working, whether you think it's working or not, even if it's subconsciously working, and that can be exhausted. And then we respond in a way that reflects we have entered into sensory overload syndrome. And so those are things that we have to be aware of, and then allowing ourselves some sensory reprieves, whether that's turning off the radio on the drive home because you don't really need any extra sound, or wearing noise cancellation earphones in the airport or on the plane, not because you're listening to anything, but because you're actually trying to block noise out. And then finally, creative. Creative rest is the rest you experience when you allow beauty to inspire you and to unlock your creativity. So that could be natural beauty like the ocean and the mountains and the trees, or it could be something like art or music or theater or watching someone dance. But it's letting what's already been created unlock creativity inside of you, and recognizing that we use quite a bit of creative energy anytime we're problem solving, anytime we're having to think outside of the box. If you're an entrepreneur, you're using an excessive amount of creative energy for all sorts of things, from how do I get customers? How do I build this? And so we need to be aware that any way that we use energy within our lives can get depleted. And then what are you doing to pour back into that area? Because that's really what rest is about. It's about restoration, restoring the places where we have deficits.
Hmm. Wow. Just as you're listing those, I went ahead. You have a test available online that is sort of testing sort of where you're at and your levels. And I don't have the results in front of me, but I just remember when I opened the results and I was like, oh, I need rest in all 7 of these areas. But as you're describing it, it's actually not that surprising, just thinking about what our days and lives look like for a lot of people. And as I'm thinking about marriages, we get a lot of questions from couples, especially who are in that season of life where they've got young kids or, kind of, I call them the middles, that age, they're not quite grown. And so you got sometimes both parents working, one parent working. It's a full season of life. And I wonder if you have any strategies or wisdom to offer these couples who they ask a lot of questions around about connecting with one another, but like, how do they find rest in these seasons where really, if it's not intentional, just sort of the everyday rhythm of life, it can take a lot out of you. It could be very draining.
Yeah, and I think that's where it has to begin. There has to be a level of intentionality or it won't happen. And so the resource you're mentioning is a free rest assessment we have at restquiz.com. So when people go there, they get a score in all 7 types of rest. And then what I recommend doing is taking both parties, both spouses, taking the study, finding out what type of rest each needs most. Now, some people might be like I am, and like you mentioned, maybe you have multiple rest deficits. Start with the one that you feel is the one that you are most in need of, and share with your partner that this is the type of rest that I'm specifically needing. Because the problem typically is, especially if you need emotional rest and your spouse needs physical rest, and then one spouse says, "Hey, I'm feeling burned out. Let's go on vacation," which isn't true burnout prevention. Vacations are usually more stress than rest. But if that's what you decide, we're going to take a weekend or something and we're going to go, away from the kids and rest or something, one person could come back completely reprieved and the other one comes back still exhausted because the rest deficit needed wasn't taken into account. What I recommend is let's figure out how do we get rest without a vacation, without leaving the house, because really the kids need to learn how to rest as well. Because we have a culture right now of people who are grind till you make it, burn it at both ends, I'll rest when I die. And they literally are dying early because they are not incorporating rest into their lifestyle. So how do we rest then as a family? Well, if it's a Christian family, we can start looking at Sabbath in a new way. How can we take a period of a weekend, doesn't even have to be the whole weekend, but starting somewhere, a period of the weekend where we're going to focus on restorative practices and actually have conversation around the fact of what type of rest do you need? Because we hear people say, you ask a teen, how are you doing? I'm so tired. I'm so busy. Then let's go deeper. What kind of tired are you? Because if we don't know what kind of tired you are, we don't know what it is you need. If you're so busy, what's on your schedule that maybe doesn't need to be there anymore? Maybe it's there out of habit. You've always been a cheerleader, so you just keep being one until you graduate. But is that where your heart's still at? Is that we have to start allowing each other as parents, as well as our kids, to have agency in what they choose to do and not get locked up into these mindsets that just because I always have means that I have to continue, because that's part of that extra stress and that expectation that tends to lead to burnout.
Wow. No, that's good. I love that you're talking about giving agency, and let's kind of dig deep in where is the rest needed. And I'm also considering like this culture with phones and TVs and screens and just all of these things, especially for not just our kids, ourselves as well. Do you have any thoughts on what does it look like when you're trying to create an environment that allows us to rest when in the sensory rest, I'm assuming is probably what we're looking at, sensory rest, when again, our homes, oftentimes there's more screens, there's, TV screens, there's computer screens, there's phone screens, or maybe it's something that you've tried in your own family that has been a good practice. Because I know for me, our kids are grown and gone now, but that's something I look back on and I'm like, you know, that felt like an uphill battle most of the time for any of us to get true rest in that one arena.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things specifically that I would recommend with families. Specifically, if you have kids with phones, there should be no phone zones within your family dynamics. So meal times, regardless if it's at home or in a restaurant, are no phone zones. And they open up an opportunity for social and emotional rest because you can have conversation around things that matter. So not just conversations about what they're doing or the performance conversations, but conversations about their heart and things that are affecting them and what they're enjoying. And so I oftentimes recommend starting off with some kind of lighthearted question, so to speak. What's exciting you right now in school? Or what's challenging you right now in school? So it could go whichever direction you feel like they want to open up about. What is it that you're liking most about soccer right now? And if they're like, I don't really like anything about soccer, I'm just doing it because you start learning some things that you otherwise wouldn't learn because we're not asking questions, open-ended questions that let them kind of give us more information about it. So that's one way to start getting some emotional rest because then they have the liberty to say what they feel. And whenever, you have a family member, your spouse or your children that says, you ask the question, how are you doing? It's usually answered with like a one-word response. I'm good. I'm fine. It doesn't give you any information. So I usually recommend asking different questions, things that require them to actually process and kind of evaluate what's going on inside of them and the actions they're currently taking. And I think that tends to open the door for some of these types of rest that are harder to identify if someone's needing. If they're losing motivation or inspiration, you can see how a creative rest moment can add to that. If they're feeling depressed or anxious about something, you can see a place for emotional rest to come in. If they're saying, I can't figure this out, you can see that mental rest might be an issue that they're facing. It gives you more information on how to best support those that you love.
In terms of when you're trying, because you obviously mentioned the 7 different types of rest, and with each deficit, you gave kind of a couple of examples, but obviously reading your books, any other resources that you would recommend for people when they're, okay, now I recognize the deficit, but I'm looking for creative ways to then actually fill that?
Yeah. So in the book, we break it down in such a way so that with each type of rest, we give at least 3 different ways that people can begin to get rest in that specific area. We call it kind of the rest theory. Recognize your current risk, evaluate where you're at right now, which is the quiz, the science and the research so that you understand why it's happening. And then T is today's application for the REST, and some specifics that you can try because what works it's like taking a blood pressure pill. What works for one person may not work for the next person. What works for your spouse may not work for you. So you have to have some trial and error. It's very individualized. It's going to require you to actually evaluate what leaves you feeling restored because that's the goal. What makes me feel poured into versus feeling even more drained. And so it takes some sampling of the different opportunities that are out there for rest and restorative practices.
Yeah, I like that because it's true. People are wired so different, and there can be things that I've experienced that friends have given me, very well-intended advice on, oh, you're tired, you should, and then they usually fill in the blank with something that's very restful for them. And then I've tried it and been like, that was not helpful. Like for whatever reason, for me, it was more draining or I just came out feeling more tired, which is strange, but
if it was the wrong, it could, the problem is most of the time when people do that, they are not evaluating the type of rest you need. They are just giving you a restorative practice. Because I could say, hey, take a nap every day and that'll make you feel great. But if you don't have a physical rest deficit or a sensory rest deficit, which are the only 2 things that sleeping and a nap really help, then if your issue is an emotional rest deficit, you're going to still wake up emotionally depleted because you haven't even touched that reservoir. You haven't poured into it. You haven't done anything to it. So I think that's the problem. That's why so many people stay exhausted and feel like nothing works for them. It's not that nothing works. They haven't identified the type of rest. So therefore they're not actually doing the appropriate type of restorative practice.
Wow. I have literally never thought of it other than when I first looked at your test. I've never in my mind thought about breaking it down into different types of rests. And I feel like I'm having this like mind blown moment of, man, this makes so much sense. Why exactly what you just said, where I've had days where I'm like, I'm tired and I'm just going to take a nap and woken up more exhausted. And now sitting here listening, being like, yeah, because it wasn't actually physical tiredness, it was something totally different. So, how any advice you would give? I know you touched on it earlier, but I'm sure with married couples, one of the challenges is if they have different deficits and therefore it's something different that each of them need. But maybe advice on how do they sort of harmoniously address their rest needs when they're not the same deficits.
Yeah, usually it's a divide and conquer because, for example, my husband tends to have he's in IT, so he's always thinking and processing. His brain's like a computer. He's always processing something. So for him, it's 90% of the time a mental rest deficit. His brain is going and churning and going and churning. So the way he experiences mental rest is when he goes out for a jog. Cyclic type activities where he's concentrating on his breathing and his cadence. It works like a mindfulness practice because he's so focused on those two things that it clears his mind out so he's able to get mental rest. Well, going for a jog to me is stress. I don't want to do that. That's not, I don't have that issue. That's not the way that I get mental rest. So he has his time where when our kids were young, he had his time that he would go do a 30-minute or 40-minute jog, and I'm doing mom stuff with the kids. And then for me, typically my rest deficit has to do with things like emotional rest or social rest. I need space and people that feel safe where I can share myself authentically. And so he understood that on the weekend, I'd have a 4-hour block where I go do things with my girlfriends and hang out and do those kind of activities. And he would have the kids during that time period. My 4 hours on the weekend add up to his 5 hours, basically, going for a 45-minute or whatever it is, 45-minute jog, during the week, Monday through Friday. So we look at it as a team. We both need what we need, and it doesn't have to be the same thing, but we need to respect that each other has needs. And how can I support you in what you need? And how can you support me in what I need? And so when you have kids at home, sometimes you do have to just be realistic about, you know what? Okay, I'm have this block. You have that block. Both of us have some compromise to do, but we both come out of the equation better.
Man, I feel like there's so much, even in like this little interview time, so much gold for people. And I really hope more than anything that they take from this, but that this is something that fuels them to go get your book. I for sure recommend taking that quiz because it was eye-opening for me. And it wasn't even something where I saw the results and I was like, that's not true. It just was spot on where I was like, that's very much what I'm feeling right now. So I look forward to doing more studying into the book because I feel like now I'm recognizing the deficits and I'm ready to actually start addressing them. And I just love the advice and the wisdom you shared on families and marriages because this is a huge thing for the whole family system, both for us to be rested in our marriages so that we have healthier marriages, but even how we help lead our kids through this because at least my experience is the world around them is not promoting rest. And so what a great opportunity for us when we have them in our home to do that. Dr. Saundra, I've appreciated this conversation. I honestly am so excited to go read your book. Being Fully Known, this is your newest book. What is the newest one about? Because obviously Sacred Rest kind of speaks to it, but talk to me a little about this new book.
Yeah, so Sacred Rest, we hit all 7 of the types of rest, kind of going through all of them and giving people the framework. And after people went to restquiz.com and took the quiz, we have had almost a 500,000 at this point. But at the time that I was doing the research for Being Fully Known, we had 250,000 people who'd taken the quiz. And so I had lots of data to see where people were struggling. And some of the areas where they were struggling the most were spiritual, emotional, and social. And so Being Fully Known really goes deeper into those three types of rest. It's written in such a way so there's a lot of reflection. Each chapter has reflection or unveiling questions to help them go deeper into self-awareness about where they're at in their journey, and really goes very deep into the aspect of identity and how a lot of us, the stress we're feeling is the stress of becoming more aware of what we like, what we dislike, what we desire, what we don't desire, and the tension that happens in that because of the prior expectations we have on ourselves or that other people have placed on us, and learning how to navigate that tension to get to a place where we can be authentic and transparent and feel like we can be the best version of ourselves and be at rest with that.
Wow. All right. Well, now I need to read all your books. So got to go place an Amazon order.
Well, for those of you who don't like reading, they are all audiobooks as well. Because I know for myself, I prefer an audiobook. That's my personality. I like to hear the author read the book. And so they're all in audiobook as well.
Do you read your audiobooks too?
I do.
Is it your voice?
It is my voice. I personally
sold me.
like books that the authors themselves read it, because I feel like you really get the heart behind the words when the person who wrote the words are saying them. So
Yes, I 100% agree. Now that you've told me that it's your voice, I'm all about audiobooks. I usually do the little sample just to see if it's the author before I commit to an audiobook. So.
I'm the same way.
Oh, well, Dr. Saundra, this has been lovely. I appreciate you giving your time today. I appreciate all these years of research. And you mentioned with the 500,000 people, hopefully whoever listens to this podcast maybe will be able to point more people towards this work that you're doing. And yeah, just grateful for your willingness to come on.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a joy to be with you.
Well, we're back. Thanks so much for tuning in this week. Are you ready to rest?
I am beyond ready. In fact, I'm excited because we're leaving this to go, just the two of us, away for just overnight, but I'm very excited.
And I've held this as I sort of held it as a surprise. I told you that we were going away this weekend for one night. And then in front of you, I told our daughter that we were going away to Boston. So gave away the location, but I held the secret until today about what we're doing. So
super pumped because part of it includes going to see a comedian. Yeah. And one of the things that is so just, it's a restful thing for me is actually laughter.
Yeah.
I love to laugh. I love humor. And I'm so excited that we have a whole date built around just going. And this is somebody that we discovered through Nate Bargatze. Sorry, Nate.
This guy's name is Aaron. His name is Aaron Weber. Yeah.
Right. So Aaron Weber, we heard about through another comedian, and yeah, super funny guy.
I like going to, I don't think this is a very big venue, and we're actually going to see Nate at the TD Garden this summer, which is cool. Like, that's incredible. Like, we saw him years ago in like a smaller venue, but I actually like small. We get to see Dustin Nickerson. We saw at a small venue. Two things that I love. Well, I say three: a clean comedian, a small venue, and an early start time. If you can do those three, and affordable tickets is number 4. So like, this is like hit on all cylinders.
I just think if you're a comedian and you have a clean set and it's funny, that is actually like a next level skill. Because I do think one of the hard things about comedians is there's
so many like Netflix specials that like we watched like 2 minutes of and we're like, nope.
Like, ew. But I just also think that it's like so many comedians go to. Yeah. And so to have these guys that just like kind of everyday life stories and things, and they're, oh my gosh, so funny.
I think that I get to enjoy it on multiple levels. One, I love just laughing, but I also enjoy there's something just so vulnerable and courageous about the craft of stand-up comedy. Somebody's putting themselves out there And we've got to see a couple, and we get to see Mike Birbiglia do the Old Man in the Pool at Lincoln Center in New York. That was pretty awesome. And he's a different style. Like he typically is like a long narrative. I love storytellers. So yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be a great night.
Yeah. So we'll get some rest, early show. So we get to go to bed early because we're old like that.
I asked you, I was like, would you rather do a 5 o'clock dinner or a 8:30 dinner? And you did
I was like
not.
4:45.
Is there anything earlier? But how can people stay connected to our podcast?
All the ways. You can follow us on the social medias. You can subscribe on YouTube. You can listen anywhere you listen to podcasts. And then if this is something that's a gift to you, share it. Share it with your friends.
Yeah, sharing is caring.
If you don't like it, share it with your enemies. Either way, it's spreading around.
Two other things just to quickly mention. If you go to either of our website, BethanyandNeedham.com or AndyNeedham.com, there's a new shop link. And you can get apparel, which there's slightly off script apparel, but there's even the hot seller is all of the Bethany and Needham band.
Hot seller
Is greater than the Andy Needham band.
I just want to go on record. I did not design this apparel, and I feel a little odd about my name being.
That's part of that's part of being an artist.
It's
You
okay.
think it was really like not odd when my name was on t-shirts?
Yeah, but you are actually a musician with a band.
Yeah, you're a musician and I'm your band. and your tour manager and your merchandise coordinator. So
Oh,
go
gosh.
buy those. They're selling like hotcakes.
I need to sign. We have to get one for our friend. Well, no, I don't want to say because we're going to surprise. It might be a surprise. One of our friends that we're going to get it, and I'm going to sign it for him.
Okay.
So that he can have
How
signed
can
apparel.
is there a way to get like an autograph? Is that like a different option? Do we need to add that option? Or?
Yeah, come visit me. I'll sign it. I don't care.
So while speaking of visiting, we have done our first live and like our marriage night at church, which was amazing. Thank you so much to Hope Fellowship, to Jordan, to Hannah, the whole team. They crushed it. So amazing.
So good.
Yeah, and we would love to, maybe like once a quarter do something like that at a church. If you're looking for a way to invest in marriages at your church, it's a really easy way to do it. And we would love to come to your church and talk. What we did is we did a talk on marriage values. That wasn't released on the podcast. That's exclusively for our live audience. And then the second part of the night, we did what we released, which was the podcast answering questions. People had some good questions. We actually need to go back through that list of questions for future episodes because it was amazing. We weren't able to answer them all. But yeah, so thanks so much again for tuning in. And let's go have some fun in Boston, Bethany.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Bye.